Welcome to New Realities. I'm Alan Steinfeld. I'm very happy to have my good friends and colleagues, the Hurtaks, with us talking about another level of science, consciousness, and mysteries. And along with us today is Teresa Bullard, Dr. Teresa. She's a physicist. She's a change agent. She's the host of the Mystery School teachings on Gaia, and she combines the ancient mystery lineage with the new scientific approach and modern spirituality. So thank you, Teresa, for joining us on today's program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you all.
So I thought that we would look at that junction of the spiritual, mystical, and what's being called the quantum revolution. So we'll start with you, Teresa. How do you define quantum science in terms of spiritual evolution?
Quantum physics. I mean, quantum really relates to quantum physics, but if you want to define the word quantum itself, it means that things are discrete instead of continuous, meaning instead of having a easy gradual transitioning from let's say the colors of the spectrum. Like you see in the rainbow, you have this easy gradual continuum or transition in that spectrum. But in reality, when you really zoom in, it's discrete. So there's actually little leaps in between, which is what makes it quantum. So in between is empty space, is the gap, the quantum gap, the zero point field, where inside that empty space is infinite possibility. And they talk about it as the forbidden zone in quantum physics. And when you go, when an electron leaps, for example, from one orbit to the next, it disappears into this forbidden zone and then reappears in the next level up, the next energy state. And so when we look at consciousness, our consciousness needs to make like a quantum leap. We need to shift into a quantum way of being in order to emerge on the other side in a more evolved way, a more evolved level of consciousness. So there's very much a connection. And I believe that if we could bring the quantum principles into our everyday awareness, into our paradigm even that we use to view the world and ourselves and the place that we are, that we fulfill within that quantum paradigm, would really help us to make that leap, make that shift in consciousness that we all need right now.
I think what's also exciting, and Teresa mentioned it, is the fact that there's multiple possibilities. And I think in terms of consciousness and spirituality, people are seeing themselves in a box. This is who I am. This is what I can do. But in actuality, there's infinite possibilities. And that's one of the things with the quantum field. Even the quantum computer, they're starting to do this quantum computer. And instead of zeros and ones, which was the old computer, there's like every possibility is there. And then one is chosen. So things that used to take weeks for a computer to, we'll say, analyze and get a result from is now taking minutes and seconds. And that's because as many possibilities as possible that the computer knows is all coming together at once. And then the one is selected. This is amazing, really quantum leap that we're doing in terms of data information and hopefully in our own brains, our own consciousness.
And we have to thank Professor Elaine Aspic for his background studies that led to the quantum field and ultimately the quantum computer idea. So everything's up for grabs. We're in a fantastic phase of gaining, shall we say, a new language process of quantum consciousness, realizing that consciousness can be measured and has physical properties according to our work at Stanford Research Institute. I'm holding up this book, Bond Dynamics in Space and Time, which is really the 20-year study program that was done by the American government, primarily through the intelligence community, but also through the gifted scientists and physicists at Stanford Research Institute, working with Hal Puthoff, Russell Targ, and of course, Elizabeth Rauscher, who wrote more than 450 papers. I had a privilege to work with her. John Archibald Wheeler was on her committee. And of course, we know his great contributions to the double slit experiment.
Right. So, yes, he did the delayed choice experiment, which is an amazing phenomenon. It means that our consciousness, and I'm going to let Teresa add to this, but our consciousness, whether it's past, present, or future, is always part of that field. So, I mean, basically go ahead.
No, well, before Teresa answers that, just hearing all these facts about quantum physics, it parallels what we know about spirituality, entanglement, that we're all connected all the time, and also we're the observer, always observing. So how is this, Teresa, the spiritualization of science, this quantum engagement, you think?
I think that that is one thing that's starting to happen. So a lot of people in the various spiritual movements, especially some of the New Age, are using quantum as a scientifically sounding language that is talking about mystical things. And there are a lot of parallels. However, I also feel that there is a much more grounded and scientific approach to this happening as well, because there are, for example, quantum correlates, quantum phenomenon happening just within the brain. You have the work of like Stuart Hamerhoff and Roger Penrose, who, talk about the microtubules that are existing within the myelin sheath that helps, the functionality of our whole nervous system. And they say that these microtubules are one of the places that quantum phenomena are happening. If you look at, for example, that, consciousness is not maintained just within the brain, there is also a lot of evidence out there that consciousness exists within the field beyond, within the biofield, but also within the field, the noosphere, beyond any local or temporal way of looking at it. So when you look at that greater field, it has non-local, non-temporal effects, which is a quantum space. You can't really look at consciousness just as a physical phenomenon. Like the materialist view of science is that it would be just an emergent epiphenomenon from the brain activities. But there's more and more evidence that shows no, consciousness actually is primary. Consciousness comes before the physical. Consciousness is not something that is just contained within the physical body or even a result of the physical body. So we have to start looking to quantum science, in addition to the wisdom of ancient spiritual teachings, to really answer this question: what is consciousness, and how do we harness it? How do we grasp the fullness of this potential that is within us?
I'll ask the question the other way. Is there a science to spiritual incarnation, in a sense? So that's like the other side of that question. What's the science?
Desiree, that's a good question, Alan. And this whole idea of consciousness is a term that yet has to be fully accepted by the scientific community. Some see it as the flow of sodium ions to the brain. Others see it as that reality that connects the macro universe with the macro with the micro simultaneously. So there's all sorts of $10 words and definitions that are being thrown around. But in the ultimate sense, consciousness connects all realities. And Teresa is right by looking at the mystical traditions, the mystery schools of the Near East. And I studied this in Egypt years ago. I learned the Coptic language and translating Coptic documents with Desiree. Later on, we discovered that the Coptic Christians even used terms like the light year. Can you imagine this 2,000 years ago, light year, the separation between this reality and the heavenly reality. They also use the experience of awareness of the divine, which would be translated as a type of super consciousness or higher consciousness.
Right. And you asked the question about, incarnation. Of course, we feel that really there's a higher self and we manifest into the physical form as needed. And in a certain sense, that is because there is a consciousness field, something greater than our brains. And I think this is showing that when we need to manifest somewhere, that we can, we'll say, manifest in this incarnation, this place. So going back to a little bit of the idea of the double slit experiment, which looks at the observer like we're the observer, but in actuality, I think we're influencing the consciousness field from our own decisions, our own choices of where we want to be, how we want to do things. Let me just describe it's Jung's double slit experiment, which really says that if someone's watching a particle, it can be, if you're not watching it, it can be a particle or a wave. And if you are watching it, it's always a particle. So now going back to Wheeler's delayed choice, you think, well, if you don't think about it and we're just going to let it go through and then we'll make a decision afterwards, it seems that that screen that it's analyzing knows what you're going to be doing after the fact. So even before you knew it, the result of the experiment is showing that you are going to choose to watch it or not going to choose to watch it.
Wait, that doesn't make sense, because then everything would be a particle. So when is it a wave? Because
no, it's a wave if you had decided, if you never decided, and at the end you never decide that you're going to look, then it can be a wave. So if you never decide you're going to look and then you look, but maybe it knows you're going to look. If you look, then it becomes a particle.
Well, you have to look at some point. Can you explain this, Teresa?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Let me help. So when it comes to like a double slit experiment, wave particle, it really it's based on how you set up your experiment, right? So if I say I want to see if light is a wave, then I'll set it up where I don't put little detectors on the two slits of the double slit experiment. And then the light or the particles will pass through the double slit and they'll form a wave interference pattern on the other side. If, however, I say, well, what if it's a particle, or, let's see which slit it's going through, then I put two particle detectors on the slits. Now it forces the wave into particle form. So then you'll always see it going through one slit or the other. So what matters here is the choice that the experimenter makes in terms of how they're going to set up their experiment. How are we going to observe? And that's based on our assumptions. It's based on our biases. It's based on us testing a hypothesis. And so what she's saying, though, is delayed choice, is that the quantum phenomenon also is not bound by time. It's not bound by space, which we know from entanglement, right? You can have great distances across the universe and instantaneous transfer of information, but it's also not bound by time. So we can set up an experiment, run it, and then in a future moment in time, decide, okay, now we're going to look as to whether it's a particle or a wave. And based on, and it can be, running its experiment, but based on that future choice, that will determine the results that happened before.
But
so
wait,
it's
aren't you always looking then? Isn't there always an observation then? Because if you're looking in the future, you're still, if there's no time.
An observation that ultimately happens, yes.
Yeah, but then why wouldn't it always be a particle then? If you're
because until it's observed, and
right,
not only until it's
even
observed,
in the future,
measured, until it is conscious, until a conscious being becomes aware of what the measurement was, and there was an actual observation, it's in a simultaneous superposition state. So it can be both possible realities could come at any time until an observation is made.
So it's a way of tricking the observer, the experiment, like, oh, I'm not going to look right now, but in the future. But that is reverse causality could be an effect there, right?
Well, what it's testing is it, okay, we know it's non-spatial, right? We know it doesn't rely on distance. Is it also non-temporal? So they went to test whether there is any causality in time, or whether it's, it's time doesn't matter. And so basically quantum physics is saying space is an illusion. In the quantum realm, space is an illusion. And in the quantum realm, time is an illusion. So there is only here and now, if you want to put it into more mystical terms.
Okay, I like that, because it brings up so much, because essentially we are beyond time and space. If the brain and the mind is a quantum kind of analyzer of reality, then essentially, Desiree, do you feel we are actually beyond space and time, JJ?
Right. I think this is the mystical ubiquitous symbol used by the ancients to define observation was the eye, the symbol of the universal eye that sees and knows in all directions, but is ever present. The eye of Horus, or the divine eye concept that you find in the Rosicrucians, or even in the ancient Judeo-Christian text, the concept of the all-seeing eye was a recognition by the ancient philosophers that this is something beyond the normal. We're dealing with a type of what we will call superconsciousness, the ability not only to see the double slit experiment front on, but also from the backside looking at the double slit experiment.
But Alan, as you know, Russell Targ is trying to analyze how much in the future can we know. And I think it depends on the event, because we do have free will. And I want to bring that in because we do make choices. And this is all about the choices that we make. So it's quite complex in a certain sense, but it really does, I think, help us to understand we're part of this greater field. We affect each other, we affect particles, and basically, you know, what we put into the field is equally important to sharing and to helping humanity.
I'd like to read just what I wrote years ago in the Keys of Enoch, chapter key 313. Thus, there is a direct relationship between the size of the universe, the diameter of the proton, and the human range of vision, part of a larger mass energy space-time transformation, which involves changes in our basic concepts of the known universe. So we're really pushing the envelope to recognize that this is really beyond the traditional concepts of time and space. It's a timeless experience.
Well, let me ask Teresa this question. So you're trained as, you know, an academic physicist, right? And that is the concrete world. That's the physical world. And the other side of that, there's consciousness. So there's this gap between the two. It's like, did we evolve or descend from consciousness as the spiritualists feel, or did we ascend from matter into consciousness? But we're trying to bridge that gap. And I think there's a big piece missing between quantum physics, Newtonian physics, I mean, and consciousness and all that. Do you know what I mean? What is missing? Why don't we have that gap filled in?
That is like the crux of the matter right there.
Right.
Because the problem is that our paradigm, our whole way of thinking about the world, about who we are, about reality, all of this has been so attuned to the old classical physics way of thinking, which was based on Newtonian physics. And there were four major components to that. One was that everything could be reduced to its parts. And if you understand how the parts then work, you should know how the whole works, but it completely ignores like synergy and complexity that comes from the interactions. Number two was materialism, that everything is physically real and material, and that is the only thing that is real. So it kind of separated mind and consciousness out into the realm of philosophy and religion can talk about that, but in science, we don't talk about that. They said everything is separate, right? So we are separate from the experiment, and everything should be realistic, right? So these were like the major principles behind classical physics, materialist physics. And then you add to that Darwinian evolution, the survival.
Right.
And this has for, you know, several hundred years, this became the main paradigm that informed so much. And then that was reinforced by the Industrial Revolution and all of that. And now, even though we've had quantum physics for over 100 years now, it was such a transformation. It flipped everything on its head. And even the physicists, even the scientists have had a hard time wrapping their heads around it as a paradigm. Like they say, well, it applies to the very, very small microscopic world, but it doesn't apply to the macroscopic world. But now we're finding more and more that that's just not true, because quantum principles, you know, we've seen them working at biological levels. We've seen them working at even cosmic levels, black hole levels. You know, the whole universe is quantum and we are quantum. And so the missing piece is really the mindset. People are still trying to approach life as if it's materialist, you know, the old paradigm. and as if everything is separate, as if everything is deterministic and reductionistic and all of this. And they're not embracing this quantum paradigm as a way of viewing ourselves in the world. The quantum paradigm says everything is connected. Everything is complementary. Everything is based on the context you give it. It's not just only one answer for all things. There's context, and consciousness plays an important role. Now, the scientists in the traditional academic world don't really want to let consciousness into the good discussion. They want to keep it in the closet. But ever since you had the Copenhagen interpretation from Niels Bohr and some of the fathers of quantum physics, like they talked about consciousness very open. They talked about the observer effect, that it is when we choose to make an observation, we actually collapse the waveform. We take it out of this sort of quantum almost superposition into a manifested reality. And our consciousness cannot be separated from the whole. And they even said, some of them, like Schrodinger was asked, well, how many minds are there in the world or in the universe? And he said, there's only one mind. And that goes back to ancient Hermetic teachings, ancient, various wisdom teachings that talk about the universal mind, or that the mind is all, and that everything is ultimately created from within that universal mind, or that one mind. And so that would say that consciousness comes first. And then through consciousness, through thought, through application of directing that thought through will and directing the forces of creation, it then ultimately comes into physicality.
And of course, we agree with that wholeheartedly. Yes, consciousness is everywhere. And I think the thing is, though, we can put energy into the field, but we also can be part of that universal mind, taking information from the field. We're really these biotransducers in a certain sense, sending and receiving information. Alan often says something about like the radio, but I just want to say in terms of remote viewing, because this is something that Alan, I know you do a lot with as well. And that is the fact that when Russell Targ and Elizabeth Rauscher analyzed the remote viewing analysis of, say, going over to Russia to look at, maybe one of the secret military bases there, they did a test on time and they found out it was instantaneous. So it wasn't that going there and coming back, which would have been maybe limited to the speed of light, even though that would have been fast. They found that the mind in remote viewing was instantaneously there, which is also saying that we're part of that quantum consciousness field.
And this is the importance of the studies, mind dynamics and space and time, as you transcend all of the paradigms. To say it another way, matter, the physical, comes out of consciousness, as well as the mental comes out of consciousness. So we are looking at a redefinition of consciousness as more pervasive, universal.
Well, no, I'm just thinking, taking what Teresa and the Hurtaks said together, maybe we need to shift our point of view in the sense that if we take consciousness as primary, then we can include the Newtonian world. But the Newtonian world cannot include the quantum metaphysical world. And so if we could educate scientists to say, well, first there was the one, the all in all, the one consciousness, it's all one consciousness. Like Max Planck said, it all comes down to consciousness. And
well, that was the whole idea of the SRI experiments, is to train scientists who were top in their field, who were logical positivists, or we would call them reductionistic materialists, to realize that they could actually leave their point of observation, travel to any part of Mother Earth in a particular time, tune into another mind and record information without technology.
And, we're talking about the mind and being somewhere. Remote viewing, you can do testing and you can see that it works, but there's also remote healing. There's also transformations where we're able to send our energy to, we've done it to alter weather patterns, to go around major cities when there's tragedies, maybe that could happen. There's so much empowerment that we have, but not because we're pushing something away with our hands, but because we're actually lending our energy to that quantum consciousness.
Well, Donald Hoffman just won a prize, one of the prizes from IONS. Were you aware of that, Teresa? He won a theorem for non-local consciousness. You know Donald Hoffman's work? he says time and space are doomed, and he's looking at it from a scientific overview that I think even Einstein said time and space are just um, um, things we function in a sense, but they're not real unto themselves. They're fabrications of the mind, essentially. So how do you fit that whole idea of this transcendental reality that's beyond time and space, which is consciousness? How do you fit that into science in that way?
You know, I love what you said earlier, if I can just comment back,
Please.
where you said, you know, when we take that view, if we just shift to the consciousness as primary view, and then Newtonian, you know, reality can fit into it, it's similar to what happens when we shift to a higher dimensional view of something, right? If you look at just an ant, you know, running on a piece of paper, and it seems like everything is flat and straight, but actually, if you look from a three-dimensional perspective, actually that ant is running on a sphere or a ball, and you can see up close, and you can see that, you know, reduction of the 2D, but you can also see the 3D and the higher perspective. So I think that that's really good what you said there, because when we come from that consciousness as primary, it is a multi-dimensional experience. Yeah. And when we, you know, as we step our way down, quantum physics is sort of like a bridge into this 3D reality that is approximated by Newtonian physics. So Newtonian physics and statistical mechanics and all these things from the classical physics world is an approximation in this sort of macroscopic level of 3D reality. But when you go down to the fundamental levels of it, it's very quantum. And when you go beyond the quantum, whatever that next step is into unified field theories, it's multidimensional. And so we have to go to much higher and higher dimensionality of things. And when you look at time and space is very much a function of 3D reality in the physical manifestation. But when you go into higher realms, the time is folded, space is folded, and they can, what appears to be very distant here, there in those higher dimensions can actually be folded over and connected and instantaneously in one place.
Right. But you make a good point that Newtonian physics is functional. It works. This is why people are so attached to that paradigm. And so JJ, Desiree, how do you go beyond that paradigm and make a kind of quantum spiritual reality practical? That's my question to you.
Well, yes, you have to look at other dimensions. You have to look outside of yourself. And you have to realize also that you're empowered to be part of that field. I think that's one of the other problems that people have. They don't feel that they're empowered. They think, you know, like say during COVID, they were sitting in their room or in their house and there were no communication unless they, you know, got onto Zoom or got onto a phone call. That's not reality.
Well, they have a bottom below consciousness. They're taught by the cultural norms that they are finite and they cannot experience the infinite. And in the mystery school traditions that Teresa is familiar with, and we also, there's a recognition that the mind has certain endowments of connected with a universal consciousness. It's certainly a global mind where we have the power to reach out and to experience simultaneously, not only one dimension, but multiple dimensions.
And we use it to help heal the planet because our energies can go to a place where there needs to be healing, whether it's from an earthquake or from, you know, weapons of war type of thing. Or we also use, and I think Teresa does too, to reach other, we'll say, energy beings, because, you know, people talk about the fifth dimension or the 10th dimension. And, you know, they think, well, if I get to the fifth dimension, like I'm there, you know, and like, who else is there? Right? Is there anyone else there? Is it just you? But in actuality, there's myriads of beings there. So you can get information, you can see things about these other dimensions, you can get, you know,
I think that really answers the question that I asked. How is it practical? Because intention works. Manifestation works, and this is a practical app. Like, even though Western mainstream Newtonian science wouldn't agree that thoughts are things, if you put your intention on something, you even said, Desiree, you moved the fire that was coming to Sedona because you and a group of people intended it. And so, is that good proof, Teresa? Yeah, talk about that.
I love this conversation because you know, when you talk about, well, you know, Newtonian physics is practical, it was 100 years ago. But in our world today, you know, with digital and quantum, everything has been speeding up. And, you know, Newtonian mindset is very linear, very limited, very logic oriented. And it actually is creating a box within which people have to operate that is very limited. And it's making it very difficult for them to keep up with the interconnectedness and the fast pace and the accelerated and the multidimensionality that we need to be operating at today and into the future. It's only going to keep increasing. And so quantum physics as a paradigm is extremely practical for the point of evolution that we are at right now as a human race, because we need to be thinking and functioning in a much more multidimensional way. Yes, recognizing thoughts are things. And also it's already proven scientifically. For example, some of the research from Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab at you know, the PAIR Research Lab, where they did random event generators and random number generators. And they've shown to, like, I think their statistics was like 1 to 8 billion. I mean, it was really, really solid evidence that our thoughts can affect and move things away from randomness, even though there shouldn't be any physical ability to change something from randomness. Like a quantum phenomenon has a random unpredictableness to it.
Right.
Or a random walk, you know, a computer that's just generated to create a random walk. Or, you know, you think of like bingo and the balls kind of bouncing around on the pegs and it's hard to guess, right? These are all random event generators. And they've shown that our thoughts can affect it and move it away from random into more ordered according to intention. So, you know, these experiments have already been done.
That is so good that you're saying basically our technology is pushing us to understand we are multidimensional quantum beings in a sense. And I think that's a great use of technology if we can be on top of it and not let it control us. Yeah, Desiree, you were saying.
And she was talking about, you know, the randomness being able to be changed by the power of the mind. But in addition to that, one of the things that the peer group had to come up with is the fact that even 9/11, that people right before 9/11 had sensed something odd. So even in time realities, they started connecting with that situation, which is an amazing thing.
Well, that was it. There was no longer random. The number generators, it's already started to take on a pattern. This is what Roger Nelson at Princeton with the random number generator looked at those random numbers that were started to form patterns before planes hit the World Trade Center, like hours before. And they just noticed there was something odd going on, precognizant of that event. How do you explain that, Teresa? The precognizant awareness.
Well, that's almost a similar idea as the delayed, you know, experiments where they, it's precognitive, but the event happened a few days later, but it registered in their consciousness, you know, a few days before in the mass consciousness, which then affected the random number generators. So again, time is not a you know, only forward moving linear causal kind of thing like we have from the classical world. It is non-linear, it is non-temporal, even in the quantum realm, and consciousness operates within a quantum field versus just a physical kind of phenomenon. And so
and even in the remote sensing studies, we had off-planetary observations. I saw the pyramids on Mars in a mathematical relationship before NASA got there. Ingo Swann, my colleague, saw a ring around Jupiter before NASA got there. So we have the ability to expand this consciousness beyond planet Earth. We're not localized only in one planet. Consciousness ultimately has the ability to see a much larger picture.
But the bigger question here is that if we have that facility, who are we really as human beings? And of course, this is what mystery schools are about. So the essence of a human being, the essence of the soul, spirit, whatever you want to call it, is beyond time and space. That's our essential nature.
We are a universal consciousness in human form.
Right. So
we're eternal and infinite, right? So no time, no space, eternal and infinite.
Exactly. So in the mystery schools that you're part of, Teresa, how does the adept, the initiate, start to feel into their own infinite nature. I know JJ and Desiree have their own incredible spiritual practices and mantras, but how do you do that, Teresa?
You know, it's a combination. I mean, we start off with the teachings, just helping them to hear, just having the concept taught to them that you are an eternal being. And that means that you've never been born and you can never die because you're eternal, which also means that you are God, you are divine, there is no limit. And at first, you know, we introduce these teachings right away. And at first they go, oh yeah, it feels good, but I don't know. You know, it's like the subconscious and the ego and the identity just sort of limits it. But the more they hear in time, the more they accept. But then to experience it, yeah, we also have various tools of meditation, ritual, chants, you know, group ceremony work and raising vibration and alchemy and ascensions and activations and initiations and all of it. That is the work of the spiritual journey of transformation. And as we go through that transformation, and you never really reach an end to it, because as far as you go, you've evolved, you've expanded your consciousness and raised your vibration, but now there's further. And then there's further, because if we're truly infinite and truly eternal, there is no end. And so we're always on that journey of taking it to the next level. And the ancient mystery schools have so many tools and teachings and methods that have been preserved through these ancient traditions and handed down to be able to, you know, they're like the spiritual technology for awakening our consciousness again to who we really are and the power that's within, the potential within.
No, thank you. That's great. Go ahead, Desiree. Yes, I had.
And we feel that this planet right now, or our experience here, is really the schoolhouse for the soul. And so, you know, whether we get challenges from the earth or whether we are able to start growing into higher realities, we feel, and you were saying, Teresa, that things are speeding up so much. We feel that if you do it from an emotional body, well, like I have to be here because I love that or whatever, or, you know, you're using it, the intellect, well, it seems logical that I am, you know, going to this job and then I go to that job, whatever, you know, that's all not going to be working anymore. We have to use our higher self or our greater consciousness, tapping into the divine mind. And we're God's small g. We do think that there's a greater universal mind, but ultimately that's the way that we're going to be able to grow, evolve, and spiritually link up.
So this is self-realization of the infinite way. And this consciousness studies that we have been part of worldwide is redefining a type of new spirituality. Ultimately, science and spirituality converge. And we recognize that we are co-creators and involved in a fantastic program of being here, but also throughout the universe.
I just want to say one more thing. So in our book, Over Self-Awakening, which is part of this, the very first thing is exactly what Teresa said. Know that reality exists. And most of us doubt it. And when you doubt it, even if you see it, you start backing away. When you know it exists, then you start moving into it.
Right. But I want to bring it back to one of my favorite subjects, making contact, you know, because these ETs, whatever's coming in and out of our dimension, is not using Newtonian physics, obviously. It's not propulsion. It's not putting something out. You get something back. And we're still running our world, our trains, our planes, our, you know, everything on Newtonian physics. So the big practicality for the quantum world, and I think quantum physics is really just an in-between to something we have yet to really discover. But how could we reach these understanding of ETs? And it's coming out. We are at the precipice of a paradigm right now. It's happening in Congress. If you've seen the latest disclosure, we're about to be, they're about to roll out the bodies and the craft saying, we don't know what's going on. So yeah, Desiree, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I just want to say, well, we just did a film with you with James Fox that had to do with the Varginha case. And I brought up the fact that these ETs, when they were working with the doctors who were trying to save their lives, used, we'll say, telepathic communication. And James had heard about that. He didn't put it in his film or anything like that. But when he said what Roger Lear was told that the ET said, and I've been playing this for people, is the fact that it's sad that you are so advanced and you don't know who you are. That's what the ET said to the doctors and the people in the room.
That's why we
before
have
they died.
Teresa here. Tell us. No, but
Well,
tell us real. Go ahead.
I think, I mean, this is such an exciting time with all of what is coming out. And this is not just the woo-woo people anymore, the crazy people. Like, no, this is legit people who are coming forward, and, you know, disclosure is finally happening. And yeah, I agree with you, Alan, that quantum physics is a bridge, but we have to start thinking quantum. Because these technologies are right there. They're right there, about to be exposed, and we have been held back probably, you know, centuries worth of progress because they have been kept secret. But right now, my big question is, when these technologies come out, like free energy, you know, 0-point energy devices, anti-gravitics, and, you know, the ability to clean the air, the ability to clean anything, and completely take the world off the grid and off reliance upon fossil fuels and so forth. My question is this: if you give these high quantum level technologies to the masses, what are they going to do with it? Where's their consciousness at?
They're going to make bombs out of free energy, right?
AI, quantum computers.
No, but we have to educate.
You know, consciousness needs to shift, basically, for us to use
how,
it as well.
How do we do that? That's the big thing.
We have to raise consciousness.
That's what we're here for. Exactly.
And our roadmap, I believe, will put us in touch with our cosmic engineers, our scientists from the cosmic cultures who are on our doorstep, and this will be a mutual learning process. In fact, Alan, your book, Making Contact, leads to other books. I've just published this book with the Brazilians who were behind the study of Varginha, and they suggest, as we do in this book in Portuguese, that we need to have an intergalactic law. We need to be able to be active participants in the trade-off of scientific knowledge now. We can't wait another 40 years. We have to realize other governments beside the United States are actually poised to bring about a whole new educational understanding that we are cosmic citizens. That goes with higher consciousness. That goes with higher love. That goes with the spiritual mystical tradition that we are all connected. So this is the big roadmap that we need to preach, to teach, to share, but it has to be a positive vibratory experience, not just an intellectual experience.
And that's the scary thing with AI, because AI is going to be us, and with a little bit more power. So you can imagine, you know, it's going to be good if we're good. It's going to be bad if we're bad, or whatever we, you know, is programmed into them and from the internet and everything like that. And in addition, the quantum computer, just to let people know, it is the superposition of all possibilities, pretty much, or at least everything that can be, you know, we'll say thought of. And so passwords, as we know it, will be obsolete, because they could a quantum computer can break a password in probably seconds. So, I mean, there's such a shift, and we're not ready for it in a certain sense, even though we're all trying to help people become more loving, more caring, more understanding. Once we can achieve that, then these computers, these AIs will be fabulous. But
we have to. Oh, I just want to say we have to teach the quantum principles, as a matter of fact, that if consciousness is one, and our consciousness, and we're entangled, if I do something to you negative, you know, steal, rob, whatever, I'm doing it to myself. I mean, people just have that as an idea, but the practicality is that we really are one. So what were you going to say, Teresa?
Well,
go ahead.
I mean, this learning that quantum paradigm and really learning how to live it and embody it is something that I'm very passionate about. And we are working on with the Quantum Learning Academy, which is, how do we do this? How do we take on this paradigm and integrate it? And I really want to emphasize here to people that we can't wait for a top-down approach. You know, like the leaders are going to start then, and the educators are going to change it. And, you know, that top-down approach is done. That top-down approach has gotten us where we are. What we need right now is bottom up or inside out, where each individual, you know, really takes on, like, I can do something. I can start being part of that change, and I can at least work on shifting my mindset and my paradigm so that I can make the leap. And as I do that, then I can help others make that leap. And as we all start to serve the collective evolution of humanity, then we become the game changers. And that's actually the book that I wrote, was The Game Changers. How do we become social alchemists in the 21st century? How do we help be active participants in this evolutionary leap that we are going through? It's a very exciting time to be alive.
So this is the importance of this conversation. We're reaching out through a whole new educational approach with Teresa and you, Alan. And this is a very important aspect of the educational outreach. Without borders, without top-down, we're on the grassroots level. The academy work that you're doing over in Europe, Teresa, what Academy for Future Science, Science by Consciousness is what we're doing in North America. We're reaching around the planet now because the planet, we believe, is going to go through a consciousness shift. It's coming. It's obviously attracting people from all backgrounds. These spin-offs go into sociology, go into economics, go into human relationships, overcome narrow-mindedness and paradigms of what I would call authoritarianism. No, this is a whole new rebirth, shall we say, that's taking place from within. And it's a joyous conversation we're having with you.
Right. If you don't want to believe us, go read about near-death experiences, because when people leave this life, they usually have a life review, and it's not from their perspective. It's from, if I hit him or if I hurt him, I feel his energy. You don't realize how interconnected we all are and how we affect the whole paradigm.
Well, that goes back.
That's a great example of quantum consciousness. Sorry, Alan.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, just what you're saying there, that experience that people have when they're having their life review is a fantastic example of quantum consciousness, where we recognize we're all connected, and what I do to them, I'm doing to me. But now, we're seeing it from that quantum conscious perspective in the afterlife, but we can start to have that consciousness here and now. And I love that all of us have this synergy. We're all working towards that same mission. And that there are other people out there who are also doing what they can do to be part of helping, show the way forward. And that way forward is not about like, oh, the Messiah is going to come and save us, and then, or the aliens are going to come and intervene and fix all of our problems for us. It's no, we are going to become, the ones we've been waiting for. We are going to become the ones that our ancestors have been prophesying about and awaken, right? This is a mass collective awakening where we become the change and we create a whole new world on this planet.
Right. And I totally agree. And I think that's the importance of not just teaching and philosophy and theory, but experience. So that's what mystery schools are about. I was in a mystery school. What the Hurtaks are doing, not quite a mystery school, but they do practical approaches. We're going to Egypt for the ancient initiations that are still vibrating through those old temples. So it's about, you can hear these conversations, and until you've had an experience of out of body or energy healing or transcendental awakening, in a sense, it just sounds like words. But because the vibration of the planet is shifting in a quantum field sort of way, it's affecting our physicality, and people are having more experiences, having more contact with ETs, having more. People are calling me all the time and saying something weird happened to me. I just transcended my body. I let go of my old self. I mean, and they're a little confused. So because it is a new thing, it's not taught in schools, and we have to make the mystery school an everyday approach to life, because it's experience that's really going to change and awaken the planet. So
it's a type of collective awakening. Even if you look at the early mystery schools of Christianity, it was based upon the way, not the individual of the historic Jesus, but the way of realizing we are all part of the cosmic Christ. In the Hebrew, Mashiach, Mashishi, the collective messiahship, the garment of light. And this is, I believe, going to lead to the shift whereby not only do we see the unity of the mystical, but also the metaphysical traditions of the indigenous people will speak directly to why their sacred areas seem to be more open to the coming of the cosmic cultures. We are in a fantastic area of time and space, and Desiree and I had the privilege of working with some of the astronauts who had profound spiritual experiences in outer space, realizing that we're all part of this totality of the divine experience. What a wonderful experience, realizing but they are all part of this infinite way of life, of the infinite mind, the infinite way, the infinite specieshood of consciousness, speaking to our hearts, minds, and spirits.
Just want to ask Teresa if you can lay out just sort of simply, I know it's like a course, the whole spectrum of sense of where we need to go from the or understand from the physical reality into the quantum consciousness reality. How do you see that kind of laid out for people interested in wanting to learn? Yeah.
Well, I think, I mean, this is one of the things that I'm actually making the subject of my next book, which I'm currently writing. And you know, there's really three simple key principles of the quantum reality. Number one is connectedness. You know, you talk about entanglement, but it's through time and space. We are all connected. And the more that we can start to see our connectedness to everything, we're living in a highly connected world now. So it's a lot easier to see. But, you know, on your day to day, I think both you and JJ said that, you know, it's our day to day. We have to start really living this. And the tools are one of those ways that we really come to create a pattern of life in daily living that helps us make that shift. And I see that very much it's a merging of spiritual and quantum and physical. They're coming together. Quantum is sort of the bridge for the two, for the physical and the metaphysical, and the quantum kind of helps us make that leap. And second is consciousness itself. You know, we have to learn to harness our consciousness, focus it. You know, a lot of people with the law of attraction stuff, it's like, well, if I just make the affirmations and think it and meditate upon it, it's going to happen. But there's so much more that goes into how do we harness our consciousness. We have to come to a high level of coherence. We have to learn to really first come to stillness and quiet the mind and really hold that state of stillness and quietness. And then with very coherent thought, bring in what we want to create. And then there's another key principle of quantum physics, which I think is the harder one for people to understand, and it's called complementarity. But this is where that wave particle duality comes from. This is where things like time and energy are entangled, or momentum and space. And they're these complementary pairs. And it's in that space of uncertainty, right? They talk about the uncertainty principle. It's in that uncertainty that we need to learn to not fear the uncertainty, but embrace the uncertainty, because in uncertainty is where you have infinite possibilities come forward. That's where you can start to create from many, many opportunities, many, many possible realities, and you select what you want, but you can't fear it, right? And if we fear it, we're going to create what we fear. But if we
stay attached to what we know and stay attached to separateness, I think on some level in the future, we'll realize that consciousness is energy, energy is matter, waves are particles. We're just seeing it very separate because we're looking at a very limited perspective.
Right. Yeah, so both and instead of either or. And instead of saying, well, there's only one truth and it's my truth and yours is wrong. No, there's many, right? There are many perspectives, many possibilities. Well, so this is the kind of stuff we train people with. And, you know, the mystery school, what I love about it is it's adapted for a modern way of life. It's a modern mystery school. So how do we bring these ancient traditions and practices to support our experience and going through that alchemical journey of transformation and bring it into daily modern life and a modern way of living? And so I think that's really important. Well,
that is so important. That is great. Thank you for joining us. I think we're with what you're saying, Teresa, and what doctors JJ and Desiree are saying, that we are at the cusp of awakening to new realities. That's what I call my program, new reality.
I would add to that, Alan and Teresa, the experience, not only the intentionality, but we must have the actual experience, the inner vibratory experience. This is another phase of what I will call the next unfoldment of consciousness, is to realize there's a loving and joyous experience that goes not just a intellectual reflection, but an actual outreach of the heart, as I see in hearing Teresa as a spiritual sister, you as a spiritual brother. This is a new type of holistic relationship.
We are on the cusp of a new age, a new time. It's really exciting that these concepts are being talked about and embraced in mystery school teachings, in the works of JJ and Desiree Hurtak of the Academy for Future Science, and what I'm doing it really is an adventure into the unknown. And I think it can only get better from what the awful horrors of the 20th century were, and maybe even parts of the 21st century. But it's changing. It is changing. We are the game changers, like your book says, right, Teresa? How can people find you, Teresa?
Yeah, if they just go to teresabullard.com, you'll find all manner of resources. You'll see about my mystery teaching series on Gaia, my book, mystery school teachings, Quantum Learning Academy, everything I do. I also have a Quantum Minds TV, which the Hurtaks have also been on with me, and we talk about, you know, this time in the shift in consciousness. And I just love the synergy. I just want to say thank you, because I love the synergy, and I love and so appreciate that all of you are bringing such a positive message of empowerment and hope for people in these times. Because if you just listen to the news, it's all very scary right now.
Right.
But I think we are living in such an exciting time, and there is a lot of hope, a lot to look forward to. And you know, we just need to be conscious in how we approach it today.
I think there's a lot of hope. The fact that we're having this conversation and people are hearing it and awakening possibilities is part of that hope. And we need hope, because if we take the other end of it, it's like, what's the point? But we're here for a reason. We're here to uplift the planet in whatever little way we can, or big way. And if all of us did it, we'd have a changed world. So the Hurtak's teachings, how can we find you, Desiree, JJ?
Yeah, so I love the synergy that all of us bring together. That's so always a pleasure to be with.
We are Homo Universalis, universal humanity in teamwork, in love, in teaching, that we are always united.
And our websites are keysofenoch.org or futurescience.org if you want more of the science. It's amazing. I think we're 8 billion people ready to make that quantum leap into the cosmic reality.
We're about to hit the 100th monkey effect, and we're all going to wake up to the fact that we're entangled. I mean, just the air quality here in New York City right now, it's because of fires thousands of miles away. And actually, this, we have to, it is more important than ever to realize that we're one species on one planet, and we have to do something about that. So thank you. Thank you, Teresa. So. Great to see you, talk to you. And I'm Alan Steinfeld for New Reality. Subscribe to this channel and check out my website, newrealities.com. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.